All right. Peace and blessings, everybody. Peace and blessings. Hope everybody had a beautiful and a blessed day so far. You know, a lot of people didn't make it, but fortunately you did. A lot of stuff going in the news. We're not going to talk about that, but I think you understand the importance of being here tonight. And tonight we're not just going to have just any the typical Hebraic discussion. We're going to get a little bit more into the science of the Bible. I think that's what is missing within the community, is that we don't really delve that deeply into the science of the Bible, especially pertaining to better sheep, especially pertaining to our patriarchs of the Bible and some of these other uh, stories and narratives that really have a more scientifical connotation to it. And what's going to be important is that you have to open your mind when you're accepting this type of information, because everything that you're being, presented with is not your typical narrative. You have to be open-minded. You have to understand that when we teach, it's simply from not only from a linguistic standpoint, but from a cultural background as well, so that you can get the full scope or a holistic approach to understanding the scriptures. And I think, a lot of people don't really understand what that looks like when it comes to having to relearn everything that you've been taught. Because that's where we at right now. That's why you're here. You're here simply because you understand that I have to relearn everything that I've been taught, right? I got to relearn everything. I got to relearn my science. I got to relearn my math. I got to relearn my history, because everything that we've been told was what? Right. It's been a lie. So if it's been a lie, then guess what? I can't trust those institutions. I can't trust those individuals that gave me the information. So you got to dig deep for yourself. So where do you go? Well, you come to, to channels like this, where we point you into the right direction, because that's all that this is. Right? We don't profess to know everything, but we do present you with the scholars that understand exactly what it is that you need to know in order for you to move forward in your life. Because what more people are dealing with now today are their finances. Most importantly, I mean, that's been forever, but how do we progress and get ourselves out of these situations that we're in? Well, one of them is that we got to find a new method, a new way of doing things. That's first and foremost. We got to find a new way of doing things. And in order for us to be able to do that, there has to be a transformation that happens within the mind, because we can't move on something that we don't even know anything about. So you got to search for the information. You got to get taught the information. And so I brought tonight, again, the Mighty Hebrew from the Mighty Hebrew University to break down the MERKABAH light and the hidden origins of Abraham, the Hebrew, simply because it's very much centered around science. I'm telling you, it's going to be a powerful discussion. But before we get into that, I want to send a shout out to all of you in the chat. Layla, shout outs to you. Naftali, peace and blessings to you. Got to get you on the channel. Again, please like the video, share the video, give it a thumbs up, whatever you got to do to get us into the algorithm, because tonight it's going down. This is the place for you to be, to understand more about the MERKABAH light. All right. But again, before we get any further, I got a documentary trailer that I got to release to you all. We already put it on the channel, but not in the format that we're in is going to get continuous plays. And so it's only 2 minutes. I want y'all to check this out, because one thing that we've been doing on the back end here at TrueFlix is we've been, really digging into the crates, I'm going to say, for understanding more about slavery here in the South. And simply because I'm from the South, my parents, they grew up on a plantation, right? Like, not my grandparents, but my mother's brothers and sisters of 15 grew up on a plantation in the South of Georgia. And we have a very huge family, but again, there's so much history that goes along with that. And so we found some things that took place in our city that happens all over the world, which is what? Lynchings. But most importantly, there's a much bigger narrative behind this, and we're going to work diligently, I'm going to say, into bringing forth that. But anyway, this is the trailer. You know, again, man, I need y'all to give it a thumbs up. If you want to support the documentary, because we're still working, make sure, you drop us some love in the Cash App, because that's exactly what it's going to take. Also, too, for brother, Mighty Hebrew, hey, man, you know what I'm saying? Like, it takes a lot for us to put this work in, so without further ado, I'm going to drop this trailer, and when I come back, we're going to bring on the Mighty Hebrew.
A black man had tried to register, and he was lassoed on the courthouse steps and tied to the back of a pickup truck and dragged around the black community until he was dead.
He would have a gun, his shotgun. He would sit in the living room at night, protecting his family.
And around October 1930, Minnie Lee Thomas, she took the stand to tell her truth.
This was not unusual, but what happened later was.
But when someone attacks you, when someone comes at you with a club, when someone comes at you with a rope, when someone comes at you with a gun.
Georgia was the headquarters of lynching.
Despite the fact that you've done nothing.
This story has never been told until now.
And the only way we can bring about a change is to talk the kind of language, speak the language that they understand.
The white men would come through our town, little area where we live, with the Confederate flag, with those red trucks.
Look, people want to forget the truth, but this story must be told. And we all know a truth spoken before time is dangerous.
Tonight, video has surfaced of an African-American man being chased down and killed. His family says he was just out jogging.
He was found the next morning, his head facing down inside a gym mat at about Augusta, Georgia High School.
For grand jury findings in the death of Herbert Gilbert, the 37-year-old shot by a deputy. Jurors saying today that the shooting was justified.
It was not just the community around where Pop lived, but it was all over.
Thomasville, the city of roses.
Is now in session.
All right, y'all. Again, that was the documentary trailer for Thomasville on Trial. It says September 2022, but it's a lot more information that needed to go into the documentary. But anyway, I appreciate y'all for being here. Like the video, give it a thumbs up, and we're gonna get into this this discussion. And Mighty Hebrew, he's here. There you are. Appreciate you, my brother. Shalom alaikum. Thank you again for being a part of the show. If you would, unmute your mic. Thank you. And tell people a little bit about who you are and what we're going to discuss tonight.
Okay. Hallelujah. First and foremost, I give all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme, intelligent, powerful one of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Those strong for righteous sake all over the planet Earth. I say into the family, Shalom Aleichem. It's definitely an honor and a privilege to be here. Yisrael. Tonight, we're going to be breaking down MERKABAH light and the hidden origins of Abraham the Hebrew. And what I'm going to show is that the original Hebrews are, in fact, Elohim embodied in human form. And I did 2 PowerPoint presentations on that. That's going to be shown tonight, by the way, of Hebrew cosmogenesis and Hebrew anthropogenesis. And me and Lord Mikael, we're going to break it down with open discussion, like a commentary or discussion. So it's definitely imperative that y'all all bring out y'all pens, papers, sources of references, because tonight we're going in and there's going to be a lot of sources. And what we're doing at the Mighty Hebrew University is bringing forth a proper chronology of our history, because our history has been dictated to us by those who is feeding the objectives of white supremacy. Like I was explaining some time ago, there was a brother, or not a brother, a man by the name of Max Muller. What he did in 1856 was sorting the Hebraic Ugaritic cycles to manifest white supremacy by using the Usher's Bible chronology of 6,000 years. But let's get to this, shall we? It's going to be very, very deep. Give a shout out. I see Sister Tracy on, Layla. Sister Layla, I see, come on. Shout out to Sister Neftali. You know what I'm saying? Everybody that's watching, you know, I want y'all to really watch it. Y'all, another thing, y'all can't go in and out the presentation. If you're trying to get the full impact, you got to be attentive and listen to everything. Hallelujah. So I'm ready whenever you're ready, my Lord.
Image that you see right here is the shield of David. Okay, you have the vertical and the horizontal, and you see a man in the center. So what I'm showing right here is the first DNA helix of man. We know the DNA helix that we have today, but we're talking about the process of creation. Okay, and from my records that I'm bringing forth through the stanza of the Zion records as well as the Tanakh, we're seeing that the cosmos came into being 311 trillion 40 billion years ago. So this image right here is more of what we would consider in Kabbalistic Zoharic thought as Adam Chachma. This is what you're seeing, and everything in existence that's in existence today comes by the way of this helix right here, this DNA helix, the six-pointed shield of Dawayad.
Stop. Okay. So I know that we're under the impression that we came from the cosmos, so to say, of the universe. But at the Mighty Hebrew University, we teach the opposite. We say that the universe and existence come from man. Let me show you. When I say man, a Pacific man. Lord Mikael, could you pull up Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 19? Could you do that? If you have access to that.
Yeah, I got you.
Take your time. Okay. So what we're saying at the Mighty Hebrew University is everything comes by the way of Elohim, by the way of our cosmic body, which you see the sun, the moon, the stars, the solar system. That's the residue of the original Ha'adam Chachma, by the way of Merkabah light, traveling from thought into reality. We want to show this. Remember in Deuteronomy or Devarim, chapter 32, verse 7 to 8. Remember, the portion of Yaakov is not like the other nations, as Jeremiah 51:19 say. Remember, it says that the nations of the earth numbered in accordance to the children of Israel. The number of the children of Israel was 70 souls. In Genesis 10, you got 70 nations.
All right, what was it, Jeremiah? What
with
again?
the Most High numbered 51, verse 19. Whenever, hallelujah, could you read chapter 51, verse 19?
All right. So, not like these in the portion of Jacob, for it is he who formed all things, and Israel is his very own tribe.
Now, the portion of Yaakov is not like the nations of the earth. For Yaakov is the former of all existence. And Yisrael is the rod of Yahweh's inheritance. That is showing us an identifiable factor of the past when we were etheric in nature. When you read the table of nations, not the table of nations, excuse me, the Genesis, the creation story, the emanation, in each dispensation or each quote unquote day, we existed, but our existence was adaptable to that environment. That's how we was encased. So we existed the first day, the second day, the third day, the fourth day, et cetera, if that's what you want to call it, day. We say Yawam, which means that which containeth life. So we existed, but our form may have varied so we can survive within that condition. So once the sixth emanation came, or the sixth creative cycle, now you're talking about the body now solidifying into what we see the physical anatomy of man. In the previous root epics, we existed, but our bodies could have been more stronger to the condition. It could have been a variety of things, but we existed. So you can continue on. I just wanted to show right there in Jeremiah 51:19 that the portion of Yaakov, or the nation of Israel, were not like the nations of the earth. Remember, Tehillim, Psalms chapter 82, it said, "For I've said, ye are Elohim," talking about the children of Israel, "but you shall die like man," meaning the other nations of the earth. Israel, we're not humans. We're from another dimension. We're Elohim embodied in human form. I'm gonna show y'all. Continue on. Let's get it.
Okay, and everything that we know today, I don't care what you're talking about, atoms, neutrons, electrons, protons, the sun, the moon, the stars, everything came by the way of these 6 points, and the 7 being that conscious thought of Yah. So this is just an image that I just want to show in the beginning to give people an understanding of what you would consider that cosmic man, and centered around it is the original DNA helix. You can go to the next slide, Bassam. Now, what you see right here is also the DNA helix. And what you see is what you will call in the Ivrit, the Sephiroth, or what we know as the 10 planes of Yahweh Ayin Sof. And in the center, or what you see is man and woman, or the male and female principle, really in an androgynous state or asexual state. But you also see the process of separation. So it's showing how man and woman go hand in hand. There is no separation. When you see the upper portion of the 6-pointed shield, that's symbolic to woman. When you see the lower portion, that's symbolic to man. Give me a second for a minute. Hold on. So now you can change the symbol, Bassam. The same thing. You see it again. You see the same 6-pointed helix, the center of man and woman as one. And at the same time, you see the 10 Sephiroth. So not only do you see the 10 Sephiroth, you also see the 6-pointed shield at the same time. So I'm showing you the cosmic man, okay? Or let me put it correctly, the cosmic Adam, because Adam means firstborn. So this is what you see. Go to the next slide, because now we're getting in. Okay, Hebrew Cosmogenesis 101. Why do people keep lying, saying that women were on the planet before men? You hear this argument. Yo, women were here first. Millions and millions and millions of years, women were here. Men were here before women. Millions and millions and millions of years. When you're dealing with polarity, there's no way, shape, form, or fashion that one can exist without the other when you're dealing with them when they're in condensed physical matter. Okay? It is impossible. Now, you have 2 types of beings that's on this planet. You have asexual beings, and then you have beings that procreate, or better, proeminate. Okay? And when you have beings that proeminate, you need both the male and female principle. Asexual beings have what is the male and female principle consolidated or capsulated within the androgynous being. Originally, we were that which was androgynous beings. Now, if we go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 21, it says in Allah, it says in Yahweh Elohim, or Elohim, calls the deep sleep. In Hebrew, that's Thorim Dima. Hebrew, it symbolizes a deep trance, like a loss of selfhood. as we continue to read, it says that this loss of selfhood or this deep trance fell upon the Adam. It don't say Adam, it says Ha-Adam, given a definite article, meaning the firstborn or the first blood. It says that this deep sleep was caused to fall upon the Adam, and the Adam slept. And Yahweh, next slide. Next slide. Yes, sir. Or the Alahayim took one of his ribs. It says, Arak mitzut, alut hiot, in Hebrew meaning the side, the root meaning that which envelops or covers or protects. So when you talk about your rib, you hear Hebrew Israelites like, yo, man, I'm chilling with my rib. I mean, that's really wrong. That's not right and exact, because the Hebrew, it doesn't say rib. That's not what Zolah means. Zolah is talking about the feminine principle or the feminine polarity that resides in the Adam. That's what it's talking about. There's no such thing as, yo, this is my rib. That's something that we made up based on the mistranslation within the King James Version of the Bible.
Mighty Hebrew. I don't know.
Hallelujah.
You know,
Hallelujah.
You bringing a lot of. Okay, good. You bringing some really good points here, man. But again, you know, when you're talking about that the woman is not the man's rib, now I don't know. I don't know if people are gonna go for that, because you know it's been you know something that we've been saying a long time. Like, that's my rib. You know. So now you change it. Now you're changing the narrative on us. How do you just bring that back just a little bit? Break that down one more time.
Well, first let me make a slight correction about the term androgynous. I don't want people to like misconstrue. What I'm saying, that Ha-Adam was an asexual being that was neither male nor female, but capsulated both the masculine and feminine polarities, which in turn became sexes later on in our recorded history that you see in Bereshit chapter 2, verse 7. Now you see that Ha-Adam, which means the firstborn or the first blood, rising with outstretched arms. You see Ha-Adam going into the deep sleep, which is really talking about a process of the separation of the polarities into Zakawa Nekiva, which becomes male and female. There was a process of that. Now, when I was speaking about the rib being taken, and it don't say rib, well, the Hebrew word is zalah, which defines the side or the feminine principle within Ha-Adam, not literally a rib, because we see in the woman, she's not actually missing a rib. So, I mean, like, we gotta like get a better understanding. Remember, a lot of the Hebrew words that are recorded in Strong's, they're translated based on how the King James Version was translated, and not necessarily directly from the Hebrew. That's why I'm going directly into the Hebrew and I'm breaking everything down. And then I'm giving you the source of references when I'm done, where you can go and see the same translations that I'm coming into. You know what I mean? It may not be 100% the way that I see it, because you got to remember, as knowledge, as people grow in knowledge, the understanding broadens. This is what it means by Bill. Even when you look at the nation of gods on earth, they'll come up to a brother, man, what's today's mathematics, Lord? You know what I mean? And today's mathematics, well, it's the first for me now, but for y'all, still the 31st. So what's that? Wisdom, wisdom, don't tell me, wisdom, knowledge, all being born, what it be, equality? Is it equality? Or is equality 6? Or is equality 6? Number 6. Because I know 5 is power refinement. I think it is equality. But the whole point that I'm saying is you gotta build off the foundation. You can't just stay stuck like how the elders seen it 50 years ago. Not to disrespect the elders, but to elevate what the elders brought to us with the limited information that they may have had specifically at that time. And it's also a way we can critique our Zakwanim without them showing face. That you don't do that like in a public forum or dishonoring a name. What I'm saying is we did the best we could with the information we had at the time.
Right.
Now we're in a season whereas though now we can bring forth spirituality in the science of observation by using Hebrew cosmogenesis and Hebrew anthropogenesis as a bungee cord of learning and development.
Right.
Remember, to enslave a people, there has to be institutions to enslave. To free a people, we have to develop institutions. So what I'm talking about is a thesis that has been battlefield tested. And when you look at Hebrew cosmogenesis and Hebrew anthropogenesis, it don't matter what a person that's Hebrew believe in. Whatever their discussion is about the culture, it's either going to fall by the way of Hebrew cosmogenesis or Hebrew anthropogenesis. If you're talking about the creative spirituality, cosmology, whatever, that's Hebrew cosmogenesis. You can't get around it, no matter which school of thought you're coming from as a Hebrew. If you talk in culture, the language, the dress, the eating habits, the dancing, the moral code, et cetera, et cetera. Now that's Hebrew anthropogenesis. There's no getting around it. And that's the scale, the balance that the mighty Hebrew University is trying to bring forth to the people, that we are now, as Sister Neftali would say, this is a new school of thought. But put it like this, I would say a renewed school of thought, because it's continuous cycles and seasons when it comes to our existence. There is no beginning. We came with the earth plane. So once we understand that retrospect, that we came with the earth plane, then you can't be boxed in academic consensus. Academic consensus and academia can only tell the imagination of European imperialism, European colonialism, European supremacy, European domination. Anytime you use the stroke pen of the enemy, you have become engulfed in their madness of servitude and slavery and pure hell and damnation. It's time now for us to seek a new road, a new mode of thinking, and a new understanding of developing and establishing our chronicle or our chronicles based on the records that our forefathers and foremothers left behind. I hope I answered your question.
No,
and if you want to add on, you can add.
I don't. We can get right back into it.
Hallelujah.
The law is a feminine principle that resides in the Adam. It has nothing to do with rib. So if you're going to translate it in English correctly, if you're going to do it, if you're going to be literal, it should translate as side, not rib. I mean, we're going into the Ivrit, and this is esoteric in nature. This is not literal. We have to stop taking everything that we read literal. And then it said enclosed up. Ishigod. Hebrew, not filling up a gap where the side, falsely called rib, had been, and built into it a complete human form and given life. The flesh, bashar, visible substance, dormant duality becomes activity, single sex. Instead thereof, verse 22. Now verse 23 says, and the Adam said, this is now hapam, actually really bone, ikzim, Hebrew, substance in general, spiritual, physical, organic, as if the Adam said to the woman, this is the very spiritual substance of my whole being, of my bones and flesh, and of my flesh she, Zor, Hebrew, not ha, Hebrew, she, not in reference to a bodily, come on with it, Bassem, woman, but an impersonal pronoun. Okay, an impersonal pronoun. Hold on for 1 second. I'm back. Can you hear me, Bassem? Bassem, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. It just took me a second to unmute my mic, good brother.
Okay. Just give me a quick second. Okay. All right, cool. I just want to make sure. All right, now getting back to the point. All right. So now we talking about shall be called woman, Isha. In Hebrew, it's the faculty of willing or freedom to exert individual willpower without which the likeness of Allahayim or Elohim, okay, or the generative goal of perfection could not be attained, okay, because the woman was taken out of the Adam, in Hebrew, the first blood or the firstborn, not man, which goes back to the Sanskrit word manu, which means thought or to think. So the Adam in this verse was activity expressing one's individuality, selfhood. The elemental germ of will is built into an active force. Okay, so when I watch people on Facebook speak and on social media, they definitely lack the Hebraic cosmological truth of the scroll of Bereshit or Bere Eshyat, miscalled the book of Genesis. Bereshit shows the first human form, the Adam. Next slide. It shows the first human form. Go to the next slide. That was neither a man nor a woman, but the first blood or the firstborn that was dual sexed in principle and unconsciously self-reproductive. Throughout the Bereshit 126 event, that period played of the creative fire within the cells of the Adam, which left the Adam's nerves and brain ineffective. Okay, this was brought forth much as plant or the tree that gives its.
So y'all got to hear this. So the word man, I know y'all go and get a Strong's Concordance and they'll tell you that Adam means man. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. That's a misconception. The word man isn't even an English word. It's a Sanskrit word that goes back to the Sanskrit word manu, which means to think or thought. The word ha'adam, remember, the original Torah was written in Sinaitic pictorial Hebrew, similar to the Medunetic hieroglyphs that you see. It's called the Sinaitic. So if we're going by the Sinaitic form, then when you look at the word for hey in Hebrew or ha, it's an image of a man because it says in the Ivrit, ha'adam. So what is ha? The ha is an image of a man with outstretched arms rising, facing the northern star. It's facts. Then when you look at the aleph or the ah, you see an image of an ox head. It means first cause, first point, first in rank, strong, powerful, right? Then you have the daleth or the da, which is an image of a doorway or a pathway that you're going within. Then you have the ma or the meme, which is an image of waves. When you put that daleth and that meme together, it becomes dam, as in the blood of grapes. So when you say Adam, now you're saying first blood or firstborn, right? And then you remember that ha, the image of a man, which is inclusive of woman too, with outstretched arms rising towards the northern star. So ha'adam means the firstborn or the first blood rising with outstretched arms. What is this talking about? This is originally talking about how ha'adam coming from an ecological condition known as Adama from the Ritz or the Ratazah, being born. So it's really talking about a state of existence, a society being born from the earth as a child is born from the mother's womb. Because remember, a child, when the child is born, before the child comes out, does not the woman's water break, right? Does not, in the process of a birth of a child, you see that water and blood, right? Does not a child, when that child is put in that woman's arms, that child looks up with outstretched arms towards the mother or the parents, correct? So when you talk about Ha'adam, meaning the firstborn or the first blood rising with outstretched arms, it is talking about an ecological system being born from the earth to the surface. You see? So yeah, a man, okay, if that's what you want to say, but it's much deeper. It doesn't have nothing to do with an individual man. That's not what Ha'adam was pertaining to, but it was pertaining to a spiritual, mental, and a psychological condition in an environment that would be in tune with that condition. You see? Right. So if one's sphere of Ha'adam is off, Ha'adam doesn't exist. It is an eternal idea that Adam will exist by the way of a ecology, so to say, and not an individual. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Bereshit was talking about. When you look, you see us going through different stages in our development, from our asexual being, given birth laboriously from the sweat gland. We're getting to that shortly. And then from there, giving birth as a man and a woman coming together. But remember the scripture, what does it say? Man has become as gods, knowing evil. That's correctly say, man has become conscious, but even more correctly, Ha'adam, both the male and the female. See, when you just say man, it excludes the female or the woman. If we just say Ha'adam mean man, and that's not true. The word man is a Sanskrit word, but that was inserted by the way of Strong's concordances and others to give us the impression that Ha'adam mean man, and it don't. Mm-hmm. This is why it is false to say that woman was taken from man. That's not what it says. It says the woman was taken out from Ha'adam. That's what it says. The firstborn or the first blood rising with outstretched arms. So in essence, what you're seeing when it talks about taking out, you're seeing a separation of masculine and feminine polarities becoming masculine and feminine sexes. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Fruit. Now, when you look at the first pages of Genesis, I know in Genesis 1:26 and the sixth day of creation, y'all like, oh, that's when man was created. But we got to understand the reason why man now is being shown on the sixth day. The reason why, because man in his cosmic form becoming more and more densified existed in all these days. So we have to understand that man went through different stages of growth and development, understanding him and herself within the physical plane of existence that we call this earth plane today. So we went through stages of budding as a tree, hatching, etc., etc. We're going to get into this in a second. When we go into Bereshit chapter 124 and 5:2, we see that it says male and female created he them. Now, as the cycles progressed in which the human form was developed, and the masculine and feminine spiritual principles enter into a closer association with that form. a change began to occur. Out of the Adam organism, a single sex, separate male and woman of today developed. This is easy mathematics. This is not hard pressed. If you have a batteries, and you have a remote control, a remote control can't be used just with a negative battery or a positive battery. It needs the negative and the positive for what? The remote control to work, correct? You gotta have, it's like if you want to get downstairs in your house and you're inside your room, that's considered being in a room. But to get outside that room, you have to get out. Now, some can argue symbolically that in and out, up and down, they're illusional. But in this dimensional plane that we are in, the third dimension, these understandings exist. There's a left, there's a right, there's an in, there's an out, there's an up, there's a down, there's a good, there's an evil, there's a man, there's a woman, a prince, a princess, a king, a queen. You're always going to have a polarity. One cannot exist without another. This is why when you study both the matriarchic concepts and the patriarchic concepts, they're both off. It is time now to go back to the Edenic concepts when man and woman are equal, but equality does not mean sameness. Our roles are different. Our perspectives are different, but the responsibility is shared, and we trace our lineage patrilineally, but we're not patriotic. So these things have to be understood.
Stop.
So
that.
now,
stop. Because I gotta explain this. So you hear arguments that the matrilineal or the matriarchic system was before the patriarchic system. That's true. But what they don't tell you is how it came about. The original system was what we call at the Mighty Hebrew University Edenic. It was a balance of male and female polarity. As we became more coarse in our bodies, with some of us, the ego started to dominate. And when the ego started to dominate the emotion of the divine feminine, so to say, they, by the way of self-deception, created the matriarchic system. And through that, because of the ultra feminine dominance, it threw the balance of the masculine and feminine, right? So as this is going on, and this was in the Diluvian history, as post-Diluvian started to develop, now you're seeing the rise of the patriarchic system, which that system was trying to overthrow the matriarchic system by bringing a balance of that masculine and feminine. But what happened, because of the ultra male dominance and chauvinism, it caused even more of an imbalance. So now you have this fight between the matriarchic system and the patriarchic system when they're both incorrect systems. You see what I'm saying? We weren't originally neither of them. That came later by the way of learned behavior, by the way of the ego. You see, when you are in tune with Yah Yisrael, a man don't have to dominate a woman, or a woman don't have to dominate a man. The dominance came by the way of the lower self. See, one got to dominate another. No, this is a vibration. It's supposed to be a rhythm, a vibe, not a domination.
Right.
That all came through self-deception. So both parties from the matriarchic system and the patriarchic system are both guilty of crimes against humanity because of either the ultra feminism to the point millions of lives were taken, along with the ultra masculinity of the male, millions upon millions of people died. But when you have the balance of both the masculine and feminine principles, there's no need to dominate one to another. Hallelujah.
It's important, everything that you're saying, because it all links back to that very first image in the presentation. If you go back and take a look at that, you'll see. I'm gonna pull it up real quick so y'all can see what I'm talking about real quick, and then we're gonna get back into the presentation. But this right here is explaining exactly what he's talking about, the polarity and the balance between, the feminine and the masculine side. When we're reading the scriptures, you're always seeing a masculine form of a particular word, and then there's a feminine form of the word. And so we get an understanding of what is being said and who's saying it and what their intentions are. Same thing with, you as an individual, whether you are a male or a female, that you give off certain types of energies. When you're around certain people, especially those that align with you, you connect well with them simply because your energy is aligning. You know what I'm saying? And that's just where we are. When you're understanding how this works and what the scriptures are truly saying, then you begin to start aligning yourself with the right people. But if you don't understand this, then you always find yourself aligning with those who don't have your best interest or the most high.
Excuse me, Lord, not to interrupt you. They saying that your mic is a little staticky.
What about now? How I'm sounding now?
Now you perfect. I think you should start over. Yeah, I think you should start over based upon the MERKABAH light you just brought out. Start over.
Right, exactly. So when you started off this presentation, you started it here with the MERKABAH light, and what it shows is our existence here from a masculine and a feminine polarity. You always have that balance. When you crank up your car, you have a battery that has a positive and a negative side. It's not going to work unless you have that balance. Same thing with the with the compass. The compass works based off of the electromagnetic fields of the planet, which operates off the North Pole and the South Pole. You see, so we have to kind of look at this because it all makes sense when we really dig deep into the scriptures. It all points right back to this. This is why we're naming it what we're naming it, because it's about the science of the Bible. And as long as you're understanding it the way that academia has taught you, then you're gonna miss the boat, because their designing of this, of religion is to take you off of this path, this ancient path, which ultimately aligns you right back to the Creator. And the only way that we're gonna unite as one and be as one in Yisrael is we understanding exactly the science of the Scripture. So I appreciate you, Mighty Hebrew, for bringing this information tonight.
Facts.
And let's get back into it.
So 100% facts.
As you go back to where you left off at, take your time, Basim, because I can keep talking until you get there. So again, at the Mighty Hebrew University, we're bringing the male and female principle together, and we're holding both accountable and responsible. Because for a long time, you see on social media, women badging men, men badging women. No, everybody is going to be responsible, because we're going back to the Adamic consciousness, when both man and woman together were both responsible for their actions. Going back to, let's see. Okay, so go to the next slide. So again, you see the shield of David. You see man and woman. We bringing them back into focus. This is what we come into. We bringing man and woman back, okay? Because right now, for a long period of time, we've been under this menticide that one dominates the other. What I'm here to tell you is one can't exist without the other. Prior to Man and woman, we were androgynous. And that same, but them polarities was there. So even in the state of being androgynous, or what you would call asexual, the male and female principle was still there, sharing the responsibility. Go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. You see this same principle right here. You see the male and the female. They always share this together. You cannot escape, Jake. Woman, you're not going to escape responsibility. Man, you're not going to escape responsibility. We are all responsible for our actions. We are now going back to the Adamic sonship, which is inclusive of the daughtership. Next slide. Go to the next slide. As you can see right here, the androgynous being. One side male, another side female. You see the image right there. Okay? You see the energy that's surrounding it. You see that fire, which is symbolic to the eternal light of Iron Sof. This is what you're seeing right here in the apex, and you see the cranium shining, which is symbolic to the Kitar or the Keta, which is the crown that both man and woman share together. Next slide. So now, you see that Adam alone in the Garden of Eden, east of Lemuria, personifies the first sexual innocent humanity, which the Adam and Kawa, falsely called Eve, because Eve is totally Greek. The name is Kawa. Together typify the first separation of male and female. The production of Kawa, again miscalled Eve, from the side of the Adam is a Hebrew allegorical description of this process. Chapter 2 of the scroll of Bereshit of Torah Constitution continues the description of both the psychological condition and the bodily development of Edenic Lemurian Elohim beings. The Adam was pure, unconscious of sex, because instinctively self-reproductive. The Adam was innocent of passion. This condition of human purity and the innocence are symbolized by the Garden of Eden, east of Lemuria itself. Next slide. The state of, now we got to go into the state of the soul before the awakening in activity of consciously exercise procreative power. Now let me correct that, because I put up there procreative power. I meant to write pro-emanated power, because in all essence, there is no creation. There is only emanation. Nothing is created. Everything is just transformed in different forms, because energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It only can be transformed. And let me even correct that, because energy goes back to the Greek word energos, which only means to move. It is only describing a being or a force that's moving. So this forceful or this powerful energy, which is pure consciousness, cannot be created nor destroyed. It only can be transformed into different vibrational lights. Okay? When the vibration speeds up, we talking science, right? When vibration speeds up, then what happens? Matter becomes indensed. Okay? But when it slows down, it condenses. It becomes more solidified. So the formation of the woman, of the Adam, while asleep in the garden, is allegorical. As the original Hebrew shows, the deep sleep refers to both the nascent mentality and the unawakening, inactive pro-emanated power. Okay? This is unconscious upon the ground. The Adam represents the human race at the first period of the Bereshit, of the encasement of the Elohim or the Allahayim in human form. This newly enclosed dense matter, the atom was earthly. The atom's task was to accustom themselves, not himself, but themselves to imprisonment within relativity inert physical substances and gradually to overcome its resistance. Go to the next slide. Everybody was wondering, damn, what the mighty Hebrew believe? Because I never expounded on what I acknowledged as a Hebrew Israelite sovereign national when it comes to spirituality. And my understanding of Torah and Tanakh, I kept it strictly Hebrew Israelite sovereign nationalism. But then when I start seeing the literalcism, people running around making all these crazy doctrines, I said, shoot, let me do some correction here, because I see people really don't know Ivrit. They really don't understand archaic Hebrew symbolism. They don't understand archaic symbolism. They don't understand pre-Diluvian civilizations. They think the civilizations that they've been studying going back 6,000 plus years, these are the first civilizations, when in fact, they're not. Okay? So now, the first Edenic Lemurian Elohim bodies in human form were in fact gigantic, with a minimum of nervous organization and activity. This is also supported by primary sources from both the Tanakh and anthropology, and even those evil ones in the many occult traditional secret societies know that the statements that are being made today on this show, on Global Media Inc., is in fact factual. Okay? It is said that our Edenic ancestors of Lemuria sluggishly and clumsily moved through tropical vegetation, impelled only by the desire for food. Okay? And the instinct for self-preservation. It is said that reproduction was unconscious and passed through both sweat-borne and corporeous stages. Now, let me explain this. What would happen with these first humans 34.5 million BCE? Because they were gigantic, they would sweat. And when they would sweat, would form into a shell-like substance. This is how they gave birth unconsciously. And then in form, create the androgynous beings that will continue on to exist. The deep sleep that you see in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, okay, now you seeing it being explained in depthness with is going on in Genesis 1:21, which the Hebrew word is to elite, which means to revert back. This is what you're seeing. And now 16.5 million BCE, now we see the separation of the male and female, or what you would call Zachar wa Nekiva. Male and female polarities separating. This is what you see. Okay? So it is said that reproduction, as I said, was through corporeous stages. Now, this condition, go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. As we know that this condition that we know that was taking place in the garden with these Lemurian Elohim beings in human form are typified by the atom in the deep sleep in the Garden of Eden. The life force was present, however, and active within the first Elohim physical beings, even though, okay, unrecognized, very gradually a change, which was both physical and psychological, began to occur. Physically, one principle, sex attribute, began to predominate over the other. That was the male faculty right there that was dominating. Okay? Psychologically, awareness, okay, predominate the other. Psychologically, awareness of opposite polarity was expressed. That was the feminine principle. So you have the male polarity dominating physically, and you have the female principle dominating through the recognition of the male principle dominating psychologically. Okay? So now, awareness of opposite polarity was expressed as either the positive or the negative currents in the life force became predominant in individuals. These two processes brought to an end of the male and female principles within the Adam, the firstborn of the first blood, into the establishment upon this plane of separate male and female forms. Since these generated out, next slide, because this is power. We talking about real power of understanding Hebrew culture from an Eastern, Hebraic, Arab-Parian, Indus Valley thought process. This bronze or black seed or racial progenitors who contain the attributes of male and female sexes in principle. The description of the formation of Kawa, which called Eve from the side or the rib of the Adam, is appropriate as an allegory. The reference to the rib of the Adam has also been interpreted as an indication of the procedure of the descent from the ascent of the Yah mind into denser and denser forms had accumulated in incarnation in solid material bodies or coats of skin, as you see in Bereshit or Genesis, miscalled Genesis 3:21. This involved the production by nature of the support and bony structure, of which the quote-unquote so-called rib of the Adam may be taken as a representation. Here at the Mighty Hebrew University, we will show in our Hebrew anthropology section that what is stated above and what I'm saying today had to occur. Sources you can go to The Secret Doctrine by H.P. Blavatsky and lecture notes of the School of the Wisdom, Volume 1 by Godfrey Hudson. The reference to the Adam's rib as the basic substance from which Kawa was formed is deeply esoteric. It is said that the spinal column and the projecting rib together form a right angle or square. This is also the equal arm Hebrew symbol or the letter or the number Thal. As y'all can clearly see, forgive me, y'all. My asthma was bothering me a little bit. It's calming down now. It's a little hot in here. My Isha cooking. Also, give a shout out to my Nasheens, Gabari Adania, as well as Bathsheba, also known as Malakia Bathsheba. But all is well. So now, getting back to the point. So as we continue to build on this, we know that the equal arm of the Hebrew symbol, the number or the letter Thal, has ever been the symbol of the union, descending positive. Okay, we talking about the spirit, the vertical, entering negative, receptive, the all-producing matter, which is the horizontal. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, I'm just telling these people that I'm on the radio. You know what I'm saying? Excuse me, family. Yes, because everybody's trying to hit me up too. Okay, now, getting back to what I was saying. So, it forms the shield of David. It forms the shield of David. So now, all creation occurs. Because remember earlier, I showed all them images. And with all them images, it was the shield of David there. In ancient Hebrew, it's known as Ha-Shar Dawayat. Okay? And modern Hebrew is known as, it's known as Magan Ha-Shar Dawayat. And modern Hebrew is known as Magan Dawid, or Magan David, which is the shield of David. All creation occurs as a result of this penetration in the above sense of the horizontal by the vertical. And the process is symbolized by both the Hebrew letter Thal and the square that produce the shield of David. In the human skeleton, the spinal column in each rib form a right angle, Kawa, being feminine is appropriately formed out of the horizontal arm of the Hebrew letter Thal. Thus, the shield of David hillock shows clear the allegory about the combined dual polarity of the life force that was separated into two distinct manifestations. So all those talking about the shield of David is pagan, they don't know what they're talking about. They just don't. Let me tell you where that comes from, family. That comes from radical right-wing Christians that have a hate for the so-called Jews, okay? And because the so-called Jews use the shield of David as a logo or a symbol of their nationhood in the state of Israel, they came up with these concepts that it was the symbol of Moloch. It was the so-called star Moloch. And people ran with that. But there is no primary archaeological sources that show that the shield of David or the six-pointed shield of Adam, it's the star of Moloch. There is no evidence. The only thing that we're using is regurgitated Christian sources. That's what we're using. And when I say we, I'm talking about people that use these sources to justify the shield of David being pagan. The shield of David is dealing with scientific geometry. That's what it's dealing with. Thus, the shield of David hillock shows clear the allegory about the combined dual polarity of the life force that was separated into distinct manifestations. These produced in both the physical and psychological worlds oppositely polarized man and woman. Next slide. This is beautiful. Isn't this beautiful, Brother Bassel?
Brother, not only am I enjoying it and learning a lot, but so is everybody that's tuned into the live stream. Shout out to everybody that supports the Mighty Hebrew, the Mighty Hebrew University, and of course, www.themightyhebrew.com. The link to the website is in the chat. Yeah, the show is all yours, brother. I'm learning.
Okay, so women were not on the planet first. Stop the madness. Men were not on the planet first. Stop the madness. The Adam, or the first blood, or the firstborn, was neither male nor woman, but a being with male and female principles within the Adam. Later, the separation would occur, and now male, Zachar, and Nikubah, female, will become Ish, man, and Isha, woman. Let me read that again and say it again. So women were not on the planet first, nor were men first on the planet. The Adam, the first blood, or the firstborn, was neither man nor woman, but a being with male and female principles within the Adam. Later, the separation would occur, and now male, Zachar, and Nikubah, female, would become Ish, man, and Isha, woman. Men and women were brought forth at the same time. Next slide. As we can see right here in the Hebrew around it, the androgynous being, the asexual being right here. Now, we're not saying this literally what they look like, but we're just giving you anthropomorphic symbolism. Not to be taken literally, because you don't want to fall into sin and then you start taking imagery and trying to label that as the creator. So people that run around and say, oh man, the creator is male and female. No, the creator is not. The creator is neither male nor female. Okay? The creator manifests asexual or androgynous beings that have male and female principle, or male and female dimensions, or positive and negative dimensions. Okay, next slide. And this is where we at. We have to go deep within the self, because now when you go deep into the self, you go beyond the concept of what we see as the physical. And when you do that, then we know that responsibility must be shared. We all, as men and women in Israel, must go into ourselves in deep meditation. And within deep meditation, these things will be discovered. Next slide. So now, I want to read Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 12. It says, and further, by these, my son, which is inclusive with daughter, be admonished of making many books. There is no end, and much study is the weariness of the flesh. This right here is to the scholarship body or the students at the Mighty Hebrew University. The above, what we just read, this verse made mention, okay, as with all can read clearly, at least for some, has and have been the subject to a gross misunderstanding and taken. Next slide. Out of context by many within our nation, and to the point that the original Eastern concrete meaning has become lost by most, but still stand the test of time by very few. This misunderstanding has caused many not to go into a deeper research when pertaining to our original spirituality, culture, and history and heritage as a nation. Much love to my brothers and sisters that are bringing forth the absolute understanding that Yahweh, Elohim, or Elohim is the master of the multiverse and this universe. To understand Hebrew cosmogenesis and Hebrew anthropogenesis taught at the Mighty Hebrew University, one must have a clear and concrete understanding of the three. Go to the next slide. Forgive me, family. That was my niece. You know, no harm done. Nah, the children play. Okay. You're going to shortly see some diagrams, but you're going to see some diagrams come up shortly. Now, this is a brief synopsis that which was, is, and shall always become. The nations of the earth have always viewed historical reality as being either circular or cycler or both, or as the first and second and third diagrams are going to be shown in a second. A linear view sees history as beginning at an identifiable point in the past and proceeding into a straight line to a accumulating point in the future. This is why the Western world, Western liberal democracy, the Euro-Gentile, has to this day misunderstood the Bereshit or the Bereshit, miscalled Genesis code. Many read what is now called the Bible with this type of Eurocentric lens. And because of this, they fall victims to their own misunderstandings of the Bible. Many Israelites and even the Black conscious community is guilty of this. Okay? Continue on to the next slide. Now, you see the two images. You see a lineal history and you see a circular history. Okay? I just explained what the lineal arrow or the lineal history means to the Euro-Gentiles. Then you see a circular history. This is what many Afrocentric or Hamitic or African societies believe in, the circular history. But I'm going to show you as Hebrew Israelite Sovereign Nationals what we acknowledge in the next slides. Continue. A circular view. Okay? A circular view. A circular view sees time as repeating the same or similar events in circular patterns. In circular patterns, as you can see, the Euro-Gentile Western world has always viewed history and what is now known as the Bible with lineal lenses. Euro-Gentiles view history as a growth of civilization with a quick glance at the cultures of the Tigris, Euphrates Valley, the Nile Valley, then sitting down, okay, or setting down, excuse me, with the Euro-Gentile Greek city-states, followed by the Roman Empire, the Dark Ages or Middle Ages, then the Renaissance and growth of modern nations, the so-called Enlightenment and Industrial Revolution, and finally accumulating in this society today. Both the spiritual and physical views of the Euro-Gentiles is very, very limited. Next slide, Bassel. It's very limited. People running around saying they know history, but they're looking at it from a Eurocentric lens. Euro-Gentiles ignore the original Edenic nations and cultures of the earth by concentrating on small sections of societies and events which they naively and arrogantly regard as world history. This is what they're doing. I'm not listening to nothing them jokers say. The above Euro-Gentile views and what I'm telling you are biased. The Euro-ethnocentric, and they're Euro-ethnocentric to the core. Reality speaking, human spirituality, cultures, and history are too complex to fix into a simple linear pattern. I just destroyed that. So anybody talking about, oh man, you need a PhD and who your primary source is and what colleges you've been to, this, that, the third, it's all bullshit. Okay? Now the second diagram, which is circular, views spirituality, culture, and history are of several kinds, including the circular and spiral patterns. Now let's go to this said German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. This is what he states. Go to the next slide. Since the universe has in it an infinite, even though very large number of you going the wrong way. Number of, keep going, basic particles, and since there is a finite, although even larger, numbers of possible arrangements of those particles, it must happen in the course of infinite time that the same particles eventually repeat the same arrangements they have had before. When that happens, the universe is produced exactly in every detail as it was at some prior time. This German philosopher called this view of history eternal return, or the recurrence. A purely circular view of spirituality, cultures, and history, that everything repeats itself exactly, that we can never correct our mistakes, is also off and goes against Deuteronomy chapter 28, 1-14, and Ezekiel 18. With this understanding, we, the staff at the Mighty Hebrew University, come on, go to the next slide. We, the staff at the Mighty Hebrew University, teach that the original Edenic spiritualities, cultures, and histories are circular or cycler, as seen in the third diagram. You're about to show that in a second. It moves on a spiral pattern, making circles, but also moving forward along the line so that patterns, but not particulars, are repeated. They, the nations of the earth, say that history repeats itself. We, the Hebrew Israelite sovereign nation, say it is spiritual reality behind historical events that are repeating itself. Ecclesiastes chapter 12:12, along with Ecclesiastes chapter 3, is now made much clearer. It is the spiritual realm from the subjective universal mind. Mental is never destroyed. Next slide. Next slide. So now you see the pattern in which our forefathers and foremothers acknowledged. You see the line in the spiraling. You see that? So the first two diagrams we don't acknowledge. This third diagram, this is what we acknowledge here at the Mighty Hebrew University. Next slide. So Yahweh, or Yahweh, that the objective realm of history repeats itself in general ways, but it also purposefully moving toward a goal from which in our case is to break the curses of Leviticus chapter 26 and Deuteronomy chapter 28 and make an exodus back home to Israel, northeastern Africa, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Israel, and Palestine. All one make up the land of Israel. All things exist in circular patterns, and that includes everything, which in turn repeats their experience with variation. Okay? And thereby they progress. So the third diagram that we just shown can be understood as wholeness, order, and purpose. Next slide. It deals with, respectively, the Most High, Yahweh, as a henotheistic reality and subject, the one absolute eternal sovereign, the many, Allahayim, Elohim, the powers, the multiverse that periodically manifests from the one, Yahweh, and the relationship between the Father, the one, Yahweh, and the Son, the many, Yasha'Allah, Yisrael as a nation. Exodus chapter 4, verse 22 and 23. This is also made clear within the Shield of David, which has three main lines of patterning. A vertical that represents the heavens, the mind, and a horizontal that represents the earth, the manifestation and substance from the mind. Okay? And oblique, that represents the Hebrew nation of the 12 tribes of the children of Yasha'Allah, Yisrael. Go to the next slide, by son. Yasha'Allah, between the heavens and the earth. The heavens, earth, and the Hebrew Israelite sovereign nation upholding Torah constitution, or the absolute, the multiverse, and the generative life must now be realized on another level of an academia level. On an academia level, the secret societies on this earth know that the original blacks or Hebrews, who are also labeled as black, original Atlantean Shemites, and their records from the east, the Indus Valley from Iraq, Paria, had colonized the region Shinar or Sumer or Mesopotamia, and were the progenitors of the indigenous population. Next slide. Next slide. Mesopotamia civilization, 9,564 BCE. After the fourth and last destruction of Atlantis was emanated from out of the Indus Valley civilization, which can be traced back as far as 1 million BCE. Emanated from the ancient Atlantean civilization, which was created by a sub-race of black Lemurians called Romalias. 5 million years ago, the Atlantean civilization came in the later, the Cretaceous, or 10 to 12 million years ago. It attained its peak in the Eocene of the Terrania. You know, they got all these different words, and was largely destroyed in the Macene. These are different times in history that scientists call, give these names of different points in history. Okay, so now I'm back to what I'm saying. The largely destroyed, the Romalias sprung up roughly at latitude 7 north and longitude 5 west, which lie at the Ghana coast today in West Africa. So let me explain this a little bit for y'all. Okay, you had what was known as, matter of fact, Bassem, that last map that I just sent you. Remember the very last map I sent you today? Are you there?
Yeah, I know what map you're talking about.
Okay, don't forget where you left off at. Put that map up real quick, because I need to explain something so the family will be able to understand. But
All
I
right,
need
let me
to see that colorful map.
Yeah, I'm going to it right now.
Toda Rabbah. Right there. Okay. So you see Kumari Kadim or Lemuria, the continent which sunk. Now, if y'all notice carefully, y'all see Lemuria. Then you see Australia, right? Then you see Madagascar connected to Lemuria, right? You see that. Then you see what happened. You got 34 million BCE. This is where we dwelt, okay? Then 16.5 million BCE is when the separation of sexes. But there was a lot of volcanic eruption. Now, notice that you see in all these areas, you see southern India. You see India was even connected to Lemuria. You see Madagascar was connected to Lemuria as well. You see Mount Meru. You see that right there. You see Australia. Okay. You see all these areas. Okay. At this time, quiet as it's kept, we talking 34 million BCE. Africa was actually underwater. Africa wasn't even in existence at the time as we know today. So what's happening, all these volcanic eruptions are taking place. And when they took place in the total destruction of what we know as Lemuria, roughly between 12 to 10,000 BCE, these Lemurians, they start migrating and colonizing Australia, other parts of India, and then later Africa. So what you see when you talk about the Atlanteans of 5 million BCE coming from out of the Romalias were actually a sub-root race, or the sixth sub-root race of the Lemurians. And they formed the Atlanteans. So the Atlanteans were developed and birthed actually in what we would consider today Western Africa. Even if you go on page 105 or 105 in Babylon to Timbuktu, I think it's between pages 104 to 107, one of them. And you will see where Professor Rudolph R. Yahuda Windsor is making a reference to Herodotus or Herodotus, and one of the tribes that were known in Northern Africa to stretch all the way to the Atlantic Ocean were in fact the Atlanteans. And they developed in 5 million to 4.5 million BCE. They wind up migrating into South America, Central America, and start borning these Toltecian civilizations and dynasties. And in turn, we're talking roughly, let's say 210,000 BCE. Now they're migrating into Egypt and creating initiation centers, because you have other Lemurian aboriginals that lived in Kemet as well as Ethiopia or Kush, even though Kemet and Kush wasn't the original names at the time. Kush at one time, Ethiopia, was originally actually an island. And because all that stuff was underwater. So as land started flourishing, it started to create this soil land. And you had Upper Egypt that was dominated by the Lemurians coming from either, as you can see, southern India, as you see the map, and Lower Egypt or Kemet, and some people call that area Manuro, which is M-A-I-O-O. Lower Egypt was colonized by the Atlanteans that came from out of Central America. We talking 210,000 BCE. So now go back to where you left off at, Bassem.
Okay. I believe I know exactly what slide it is, but I might need you to confirm that for me.
Okay, no problem. How's it looking in the back? Are people are listening?
Brother, they're enjoying it, and I know they're taking notes. 1 second.
Okay.
We were right about to get into your sources, and then we were, I believe it was right.
Hold on. No, you going too far. Go back.
I did.
Yeah. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Stop there. Let me see if this is it. Next one. Let me see. No, go back one. Go back one. Go back one.
We were just about to get
Right there.
Yeah, we were just about to get in Lemuria. That's why you wanted the map. Take it away.
Cain. Okay, so now we see the Mesopotamian civilization. I already said that, 1 million BCE. Okay, going into the Indus Valley, which was emanated from the ancient Atlantean civilization, which was created by a sub-race of Black Lemurians called the Romalians 5 million years ago. The Atlantean civilization came, I read that, came later, 10 to 12 million years ago. It attained this peak. I read all that. Okay, Ghana, okay. It extended westward and eastward, okay, and to western parts of Europe, okay. Oh, no, let me go here. West Africa, okay. When Atlantis was a supercontinent that extended westward to America as well as eastward to the western parts of Europe and portions. Next slide. And portions of Africa, Israel was the center between Lemuria and Atlantis, which was emanated from ancient Lemuria. Civilization at its core 18.5 million years ago during the Jurassic, and Cretaceous of the Mesozoic age of the reptiles, or as the Indus Valley sages would call the Vis Vita Menu, man, or as the Hebrew Israelites would say, the sixth emanated cycle of the formative process of Genesis 1:26 and 27. Ancient Lemuria was a continent in the regions covered today by the Indian Ocean, which slowly condensed out of the watery element between what is now Australia, some parts of Africa, Madagascar, to Ceylon, and Sumatra. This ancient continent also reached, go to the next slide, as far as India and Asia Minor, which was emanated from Hyperborea, which is said to have originated in the late Carboniferous or the Premium at the end of the late Jurassic and early Jurassic of the Mesolithic, or the second era, some 35 million years ago. These beings had loose, not half human, watery bodies, and to have inhabited a continent far to the north of our globe at a time when the land masses were completely different from those in our era, meaning that everything was tropical. The whole planet at this time was tropical, okay, which were all emanated from the imperishable set apart land. Some give this date to be 130 to 150 million years ago in the Saurian or Devonian period, or possibly in the Carboniferous period of the Paleozoic era, and ended in the Permian era or period. Ancient Indus Valley records like the Zion, which traces, go to the next one, our spiritual cosmos back 311 trillion 40 billion years ago, along with the first chapters of Genesis in the Tanakh, also traces back 311 trillion 40 billion years ago by the Hebrew Israelites that dwell in India today. Primary sources you have: one, a dictionary of the sacred languages of all scriptures and myths. You can go to Gaskell, GV, George Allen, and Unwin. Two, Hidden Wisdom in the Holy Bible, Volume 1 and 2 by Godfrey Hudson. Three, Hebrew Tongue Restored. That's by the Hebrew Tongue Restored by D. Avet Filbar. He was from France. Go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. 4, the Book of God, an encyclopedia of proof that the black man is God by true Islam. 5, the Hebrew English Tanakh. 6, Legends of Atlantis and Lemuria by W. Scott Elliott. 7, The Secret Doctrine in Israel, White A.E. Now, I already showed that you had, and I'm giving a note, the first diagram was linear in nature, which is a Euro-Gentile understanding. The second diagram was just circular in nature. That's a Hermetic African in most. Next slide. And most Shemitic Asiatic understanding. And the third diagram was linear and circular as one in nature. An Edenic or Edenian, black, Lemurian, quote unquote, black Atlantean, black Aryan or noble, Indus Valley, Tigris, Euphrates Valley, Hebrew Israelite, sovereign nationalistic understanding. Note to the reader, when the word Aryan is being used or mentioned in this presentation here on Global Media, we at the Mighty Hebrew University, we're not talking or speaking of the Euro-Gentile nations, but referring to a noble state of existence in Sanskrit language of India. Please look up the word Aryan, page 70, and Sanskrit, page 1102 in the Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary. Next slide. A chronology of nations and Ha-Adam, before Ha-Adam. Watch this. Go ahead. So as you can see, this is a timeline of the root races and the sub-root races, and it's telling you how many millions of years. So one might say, you saying it's not before Adam, but it's before Adam. Now, what do I mean by that? In the original understanding of Adam, this is the Adam. But because of our Christianization, we think Adam came into existence 6,000 years ago. So this is why I'm saying before Adam. So that's the timeline right there, the root races and the sub-root races with the dates and everything. Go to the next slide. Now, you see Mu and Atlantis continents, okay? Now, we're talking 90 million years ago, okay? And what it's doing, notice one. Look how, the reason why it's in blue, you want to know why? Because it's underwater. Notice that it says Africa submerged, okay? So the only thing that wasn't submerged at this time 90 million years ago is what we would consider, quote unquote, the Middle East, which is really Northeastern Africa, okay? Then you see two, right? You see Madagascar, correct? And then you see 3, Yucatan and all that, which is South America. Then you see 4, the Indian Ocean. 5, modern Malaysia. 6, Avalonia and Batavia. And then it says Atlantis and Mu were on now sinking continents. Atlantis was on Avalonia in the Atlantic, and Mu was east of Africa in the Indian Ocean. Much of Africa was beneath water, and India was parallel with Madagascar. Indonesia was not yet emerged when an asteroid struck Yucatan 66 million years ago and transformed shattered force to an amphipod in the Indian Ocean between Madagascar and Indonesia. The antipod drifted into Indonesia and fractured in 2012. Go to the next slide. Now you see the rising continents, okay? You seeing them. You seeing the rising continents that we see. Next slide. Now, this was our globe before the rising of continents. Look how beautiful that is. We are earthbound, family. All this, yeah, we from this continent was first, that continent. No, We was on this plane of existence when the earth was like that. Go to the next slide. As you can see, the continent drift before and after.
Facts. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate everybody for sticking it through with us. We still got more to go. This is the first half of it. We got another portion that we're gonna play, but before we do that, gonna drop one of the Mighty Hebrew song on the channel, and then we'll be right back.
I be the 9, eat the bean of the 4D, the 4D, I'm a Elohim. I be the 9, eat the bean of the 4D, the 4D, I'm a G-O-D. It's the Elohim, Ben Ami, Mizraim, universal thought, rock and 9, eat the bean. Who be the one, rock the spot non-stop? I, scientific God, the human juggernaut. 11 trillion, 40 billion, infinite children, time travel down tree of lives, etheric molecules that were cute like Rubik's 6-point born Judah, Merkabah light B, dark blue, Manu Divishnu, Ha'adam from Azulik, pure will form existence, thought the distance, peep wisdom we building, less than zero, our enemies feel pain, goodbye hero. Black rain descent to Tamana through earth chain. Elohim reign and Lord to reign. Feel the essence of Shim's fame. We be noble Aryans next to our names like Juali, Ben Ami, Harabi. Vision I see be me beyond 3D. Eyes above hills, a shadow to become. Hayah, Daniel, son, root to Yahweh, Kakma, golden one focus, unfold omen. I be the 9, eat the bean of the 4D, the 4D, I'm a Elohim. I be the 9, eat the bean of the 4D, the 4D, I'm a G-O-D. It's the Elohim, Ben Ami, Mizraim, universal thought, rock and 9, eat the bean. Who be the one, rock the spot non-stop? I, scientific God, the human juggernaut. Torah reigns supreme, Azulitic world, born imagery from the all I see. The breath implodes within the cosmic stomach. That's panoramic. 613 commandments got Ha'adam, Kakma standing. Chanting, making war cloud sounds of cosmic form and atoms to shatter the sound. Barrier the patterns, explode the matter. Born Saturn, Trend and Venus chain. Israel reign with lightning and thunder. We plunder from Babylon to North Philly jungle. Small wonder crumble in the west. Now humble from Yah's judgment. The vultures of others now coming clashing in the multiverses as poetic verses and full mental is never destroyed. The art of noise, basement music, diffuse fusion. We illuminate truth through the tribe of Judah. I be the 9, eat the bean of the 4D, the 4D, I'm a Elohim. I be the 9, eat the bean of the 4D, the 4D, I'm a G-O-D. It's the Elohim, Ben Ami, Mizraim, universal thought, rock and 9, eat the bean. Who be the one, rock the spot non-stop? I, scientific God, the human juggernaut.
If you haven't already, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Please share the video. Mighty Hebrew is bringing a lot of good information here, man. This is stuff that you just can't, walk into the library and just go research all in one day. Like this, the information that takes years and years and years and years of study. And the Mighty Hebrew has done that time and time again. Not only does he bring these powerful presentations, but he makes it so simple, relatable to a 6-year-old. And not only that, on top of that, he's banging and knocking the heads loose in these debate rings with a lot of these other so-called scholars. And without individuals, dear brothers like the Mighty Hebrew in our community, they'll rip us apart. They'll rip us apart because, this is a specific job for a specific type of individual, and that is the Mighty Hebrew. And so at the Mighty Hebrew University, you can find a lot more in-depth studies when it comes into, cosmogenesis and anthropogenesis. Hebrew cosmogenesis and Hebrew anthropogenesis. Okay, and you got many other studies as well. But again, I hope y'all getting the value from out of this. Sister Naphtali, I appreciate you being here. Again, we got to bring you up here so we can really, get this going, because people really don't respect the woman within the community that actually has something to say. They follow these teachings that say that the woman needs to sit down and keep quiet and stay in her place. But when the baby coming out that womb, it's headed into the arms of the mother. The mother is the first teacher, and so we gotta, pay respect to our women, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't be, putting our women to a corner because they have wisdom. When we're reading the book of Proverbs, when we're reading about wisdom, it gives it that feminine, character per se. And I can actually, every time I read it, I'm hearing the voice of my mother. And then there's certain scriptures that I read, I hear the voice of my father. You know what I'm saying? And so, but anyway, I'm not gonna, prolong, because we got another, stretch to go. But Mighty Hebrew, is there anything that you want to elaborate on before we get on into the next video?
Yeah, absolutely. I just giving all praise and honor to what the supreme, intelligent, powerful one of our forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, those striving for righteousness' sake. Shalom Aleichem. Yeah, I do. I want our brothers and sisters to think outside of Western academia and go back to your Hebrew based on the patternizations of functioning as a being. Our language is based on function, and we have to make sure that we never want to fall into a state of degradation, not understanding the consequences behind if we fall. So for my brothers and sisters, we have to be very mindful that everything is predicated on mathematics. Everything. There's nothing that even our letters are our numbering system. So when y'all see this portion of this presentation, we really gonna be bringing in some information. Hallelujah, let's get it.
Now, Hebrew Anthropogenesis 101. Y'all always hear me say Hebrew Anthropogenesis or Hebrew Cosmogenesis 101, because a lot of people don't really know the basic foundation of, what they would consider metaphysical science, or, dealing with archaeology and anthropology, paleontology. They don't really know these things. So we're going to get into a brief synopsis into the study of the Abrahamic cycle in the history of the Hebrew Israelite sovereign nation. This is part 1, the Lemurian, Atlantean, Chaldean, Hebraic wisdom of the royal seal. It is said by our original forefathers, or Hebrew forefathers, such as Terach, Abram, or Abraham, when you go to Genesis chapter 17, verse 5, and 2166 or 2166 BCE, Lot and others not named were under the Lemurian Atlantean tradition by way of Shemitic Hebrew Chaldean. Go to the next slide. Okay, culture and spiritual thought. Now, my sources, you can go to the Philosophy of History and Traditions by Moeller, Hewitz, translation page 285. You can also go to Cabiria, Anton. You can go to Plato, Herodotus, Book 1, Babylonian Magic and Sorcery. L.W. King, page 117, Assyrian Religion. T.G. Pincus, page 100. See also Patrice Sophotius, if I'm pronouncing the name right, and Pindar, Our Hebrew ancestors before our forefather Abraham came into being from ascendant to descendant created high developed centers of spiritual and cultural life throughout the valleys of Indus, Kush, or Kawash, Mesopotamia, and Mesoamerica. When the continents were still one, you can go to the next slide. The sons of Israel and the daughters of Zion to come would maintain and elevate these 311 trillion, 40 billion year old teachings within every civilization that they would come in contact with. Even unto this 6,000 plus year dispensation of time, the children of Elam calls this the age of the Aryan, or the noble. Now, you always hear people running around, they say, oh, Aryan this, Aryan that, they were Europeans, they were this, they were that. See, and the problem is this. When you hear people talk like this, these are people that really don't know what they're talking about. You can stop, you go on up, keep going. So, you hear people, they run around, they say all this, they say all that, but they don't know what they're talking about. So what I want to do before I continue on, I'm going to pull up from out of my book, Our True History of the Diaspora and Our Freedom, so the people can actually get a better understanding of what Aryan is. Because, you hear all these people running around here saying that Aryans are Europeans, when Aryan only means nobleman. It was a caste system that came from out of India that was defining actually quote unquote black melanated people that was of a high caste status. It did not have nothing to do with Europeans. Europeans later on took that term and used it for themselves to control the masses of people. Okay? It didn't have anything to do with what people are talking about. So right now, I'm pulling up my book, Our True History, the Diaspora, and Our Freedom. So they called this the age of the Aryan. And notice how I spoke about even into this 6,000 years, even into this 6,000 year plus, this 6,000 plus year dispensation of time. See, our people, when they read the scripture, they are defining scripture based on a quarter of a cycle. Within Hebrew cosmogenesis, we acknowledge every 24 to 25,000 years, we would renew our cycle. Each quarter of a cycle is 6,000 years. So in their mind state, when they're talking about 6,000 years, they're only talking about the past 6,000 years within a certain dispensation. They are not talking about the actualization of creation or properly emanation and formation itself. Okay? We are talking about a certain state of consciousness within historical reality. Okay? This is the mind state that we must come under. So now, we're going to talk briefly about this Aryan invasion model theory, because this is what we hear all the time. But there is updated factual evidence, family, and also new primary sources that proves there was never a so-called white Aryan invasion that took place in ancient Israel, in ancient India, 1500 BCE to 1200 BCE, but was a creation by a late 19th century linguist and Euro-Gentile racist named Max Muller. That's Bill. Y'all sit around here and y'all quoting Europeans that told y'all this stuff. So the whole conscious community, whoever y'all are, it don't matter if you're the black conscious community or Hebrew Israelites that have been running around saying that Aryans invaded India and they were Europeans, y'all are inaccurate. Max Muller was the one that equipped German linguists such as Friedrich von Schlockengel and Franz Blob, to name a few, with linguistic cultural hijacking, meaning stealing the identity of the original black Aryans. combined with racial overtones, so to steal the rich heritage of ancient Indus Kush. There was never an Aryan invasion. German racist anthropologists were said to have described the typical so-called Aryan as blonde hair with blue eye with a robust physique, the Nordic type found in the Scandinavian countries rather than the Bulgarian where Nazism originated at. The racist notation or notion of Aryan represents a complete perversion of the original meaning of the word and is a damn lie. Yeah, the mighty Hebrew, I said it. And I can back up what I'm saying. The word Aryan stems from the Sanskrit language and is an anglicized version of Aryan, which means noble or cultured. This is how the Harapparians or the ancient Hebrews of India and other originals of the land of India described themselves as they transmitted the sacred heritage of the Vedas, describing themselves. So in reality, the Sanskrit word Aryan did not refer to a particular so-called race or language. It described the moral, righteous quality and spiritual disposition, that of nobility, thus uniting those of like minds into it was like a kinship, okay, with one to another. Now, if you go into the Vedic text, Menu, which birthed the word man, which means to think, the progenitor of humanity within the Bereshit cycle is said to have given the area between the Himalayas and the Vidarian mountains the name Aryan Vartar, meaning abode of the noble flock. Later in history, the word Aryan took on a wicked meaning. So now it's time to shake a few heads by boldly making the statement. As Hebrew Israelite sovereign nationals that uphold Torah, constitution, and righteousness, it is clear that we are in fact the real Aryans, noble and cultured and centered. Yeah, I said it. I'm an Aryan because I understand what it really means, not what they've been telling you. It only means noble. The original true Aryans were the black Harapparians or Hebrews that were from the Harapparian civilization that came from out of India. It was a caste system based on nobility, not race. Our original culture was the heart of the national life and spirituality of our people. Go into the profound book, The Solar System by A.E. Powell, and lecture notes of the School of the Wisdom, Volume 1 by Godfrey Hudson. We see that the ancient records of the Tanakh and the stanza of the Zion of the Indus Valley, go to the next slide, show that the original Atlantean Hebrew Shemites of Harapparia in India had colonized the region of Mesopotamia known as Shinar or Sumer in Genesis 11 and were the progenitors of the indigenous population. It was Ha-Adam, who is known as Menu or man in Indus Valley records of the Shemitic Atlantean Hebrews that chose Yasha'Allah or Yisrael through Yahweh to transmit the original Edenic Ha-Adamic Torah constitution to the nations of the earth. Our ancestors had their own spiritual and cultural centers of thought. The original population of our nation had a henotheistic understanding of our original spirituality, but later in history, most of our forefathers and foremothers became guilty of anthropomorphism, animism, and superstition. Go to the next slide. That's the problem that's going on with Israel right now. That's the problem with Israel right now. They're so religious in nature, you know, that they're anthropomorphizing the rootless one. Ayin Sof Yahweh. That's what they're doing. And what happens, they become idol worshipers because Yahweh, whether if you Torah Center or Messianic, becomes an idea within the finite mind of the participant that's orchestrating this idolistic behavior. This is the problem that is going on within ancient Israel. They cannot elevate consciously to build a self-sustaining government because they are idol worshipers. You think that you're worshiping Yah in purity, but your ideas is limiting you to expand consciously to build within the cosmic realm that we are in called planet Earth. This is why we can't build as a nation, because we are idol worshipers. You think you're not an idol worshiper, but you are based on your thoughts, actions, and attitudes. We must come from out of the mental side and mental death that we are in. We must understand and realize what role Israel is to play. Okay? Now, you see a map right here. This is where we was at before we went into Mesopotamia. You see right there, right? You got now ancient Egypt. Some people want to call it Kemet, whatever name they want to call it. Then you see the Tigris and Euphrates, ancient Mesopotamia and Babylonia. Then you see the Indus, Ganges, Harapparia, and Vedic civilization. That's where we from. That's where the so-called black man is from. That's from America. I know it's hard to imagine that because of our connotation. Excuse me, not connotation, but what we've been thinking in our minds, where we came from, because of what archaeologists, paleontologists, and everybody else told us to look strictly into Southern Africa. That's where we came from. Go to the next slide. So now, as you can see, this is the ancient Indus civilization. You see Harapparia, which is another name for Hebrew. It's another name. So it's not a thing that we should be afraid or ashamed to identify as such, because the reality, what I'm bringing forth, is the truth. Now, I'm going to read something to y'all from out of a book called The Way, the Prophetic Messianic Voice to the Path of the Edenic Kingdom Redemption by Natsarinim Rabbi Kohen Shalamin Ha Levi. He says on page, let's start at 288. He says this about the definition of Hebrew, Ibrit, Harapparia, or Harabu. He says the name Hebrew is from the Hebrew word Ivrit. Eber is said to be the grandson of Shem and the ancestor of Torah, Abraham's father, Bereshit, or Genesis 10:21 and 11:10-26. He and all his descendants were actually known as Hebrews. Eber, or Ibrit, means to cross over or to come from beyond. Now, he's correct all the way until I believe you get there. Now, when you break down any type of Hebrew and you see the yod at the end of any word, like if I say Shalom Achi, I'm saying completeness, my brother. If I say Shalom Akoti, I'm saying completeness, my sister. That hard, E sound at the end of Ivrit when you go to Genesis 14:13 is defining possession as in relation. So with that, the word Hebrew does not mean one who crosses over. The word Hebrew means my past, as an ancient. So when you break down the word Hebrew Israelite, because you got to remember, or Ivri Yisraeli, or Aibaya Yasha'ala, when you break down the word Hebrew, it means ancient or my past. Yisrael or Yasha'ala means he is a powerful prince. So that's inclusive to princess. So in that retrospect, because Shar or Sar gave birth to Sarah or Shara, which is princess, they go hand in hand. So I won't necessarily say it gave birth. They both came by way of the Adam, or the androgynistic asexual being that was neither male nor female, which I already broke that down. So now getting back to the point that I'm saying, now we can understand Hebrew Israelite meaning the mighty princes and princesses from ancient times or from the past. So now we can continue to build on. So he goes into Josephus. He goes into, different sources to show that the Haraparian dynasty of India, these people migrated and settled in the Middle East and in northeastern Africa in areas near Mount Ararat and in Turkey. They settled in these areas. So he says on page 291, he says India is responsible for creating, developing, and colonizing Egypt, and later putting an end to the pharaoh dynasties under Cyrus, son of Cambrius, and the land of Cush, which included Yemen, which are a separate people from the peoples who originally inhabited the continent of Africa west of the Nile. This is reported in Jubilees concerning the inheritance of Shem, as opposed to the inheritance of Ham or Ham. We see that the land of Cush, not only in northeast Africa, but Sumeria, Kish, and in India, and many times the same areas that were synonymous with India are synonymous with Kush or Kushite people or Hindu Kush in India. So we see that. He says on page 292, the Eberites were considered a large tribe of people who originated in the east from the Ori. As stated previous, they were also known as the Harabu or the Arabu, nomadic peoples associated with the ancient Indus Valley peoples called the Haraparians. You heard that, okay? He also says on page 296, he quotes Amos 9:7, where it says, "Are ye not as the children of the Ethiopians / India unto me, O children of Israel," says Yahweh. He says, as you can begin to make the connections, the Hebrews have been considered by many scholars as being one and the same with the people of ancient India, the cradle of civilization. Now remember what Herodotus said. Herodotus clearly said out of his mouth, there are two types of Ethiopians. You have Eastern Ethiopians and Western Ethiopians. When he was speaking about the Western Ethiopians, he was speaking about the Hamitic tribes that lived west of the Nile. When he was speaking about the Eastern Ethiopians, he was speaking about those that were from India, your Shemitic tribes and other tribesmen that lived in India and in the Far East. So when we read in Amos chapter 7:9, when the Most High.
So let's make it clear. We went more deeper into that understanding. So really the Eastern Ethiopians are a group of Hebrew Yadavas, or Hebrews known as Yadavas. The Western Ethiopians were the Hebrew Yadavas that left out and went into lands like Sumer and Canaan land, things of that nature. So let's make it clear. It didn't have anything to do with the Cushites. That was a misunderstanding that we had in the past during the research, but we know better today. Hallelujah.
Comparing the children of Israel to the children of the Ethiopians, he is not talking about those from west of the Nile, but he's clearly talking about those, okay? He's talking about those of which you know as India or the Indus Valley. So now I want to read to you also the epic inscription, okay, by Mr. Goldsir. Page 73 and 80, it states, in the sacred book of the ancient Persians and modern Parsis, the Avesta, it is declared that the religion taught in it was received from Abraham, and according to Hyde, who supports his statements by quotations and references, this was believed by leading Arabian writers, not only of the Persian Magiism, but of Indian Brahmanism. Okay? You also can go to the earthhistory.com, where it might also be noted that Hetz and his Geschichte vis Vloris Yisrael, reasons from the identity of certain practices observed by Abraham and the patriarchs of Israel, on the one hand and by the Brahmino Hindus on the other, that a community of some kind once existed between these people. You can go to earthhistory.com. You can go to Osborne, Religions of the World. He says the name Brahma signifies he who multiplies. The name Abraham likewise means father of a multitude. Arabic, Ramah or Rahama, a multitude. Genesis 22:5, the wife of Brahma was named Savetra. The wife of Abraham was named Sarah. It goes on and on. We also can go to Bereshit, or like I said, Genesis 11:1, and we see that the whole land, not the world at the time, was speaking of one language. With this information that we have, okay, it would have been understood that not modern Sanskrit, but ancient Sanskrit and ancient Hebrew were in fact the same language. India is the oldest known civilization. It is in fact the cradle, not Kemet. Go to the next slide, brother. Go to the next slide. Not Kemet. Kemet is not the foundation. It is not the foundation of civilization. Arcadia, Sumer, none of them. Ancient India, Greater India, which is an extension of the Lemurian civilization, is in fact the foundation of existence. Bassem, I need the next slide. Can you hear me? Are you there, Bassem? I see that you got.
What it froze up 1 second, but I'm right on cue with you.
Okay. Yes, this information must be known to the masses. The information must be revealed to the masses so the masses of people will know.
Put your camera on, talk to the people for 2 minutes, and I know exactly what slide you're on, but it froze up, okay? So bear with me.
Okay, absolutely. I ain't got no problem. I ain't got no problem with that. Yeah, I'm here. Go ahead, do your thing. So now, getting back, so the family, you know, again, giving all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme, eternal, powerful one of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, those that are striving for righteousness' sake. I say unto the family, Shalom Aleichem. I give all praise and honor to all those that are rolling in this truth, hard body, nothing is stopping us. We, the Mighty Hebrews, the Mighty Hebrew University, the Mighty Hebrew Israelite Sovereign Nationalistic Research Team. We also have the Mighty Hebrew Israelite Sovereign Law Firm. We also have Modest Daughters. We also have the Mighty Hebrew Israelite Sovereign Daughters of Zion Rising. And we have more vehicles and entities that's going to come to break forth, you know, or break free this mental death that we are in, because that's what we in. We in the mental death. Israel, we must recognize and realize who we are and move as such in righteousness and supreme absolute power. We must move in power. We must move in force. And that's where we at right now. So what I'm going to do, as Bassem is sliding, looking for, well, he's not looking because he already knows where he's at, but he's just getting the thing unfroze. What I'm going to do is go into my notes, because I can actually see where I left off at. And what I will do is I will continue on with the presentation as he's building it up. So now we know again that it was Ha'adam who was known as the Menu, or the man in Indus Valley records of the Shemitic Atlantean Hebrews, that chose Yasha Allah through Yahweh to transmit the original Edenic Ha'adamic Torah constitution to the nations of the earth. Our ancestors had their own spiritual and cultural centers of thought. This is a fact. The original population of our nation had a henotheistic understanding of our original spirituality. We weren't monotheistic. That's Greco-Roman Hellenistic thought. We were henotheistic. Let me explain to you the difference from henotheism, monotheism, and polytheism. Monotheism, mono means one in Greco-Latin language. Theism, Theos is the Greek deity or the Greco-Roman deity. So when you say monotheism, you saying basically one deity. When you say polytheism, poly is a multiplicity of gods. Basically, it's a pantheon system. A lot of, Hamitic and Shemitic and Japhetic tribes, and even tribes before that dealt with that type of thought process. Okay, we back on the scene. Okay, and then you have henotheism, which is one power, but within that one power, it
Hey,
expresses polarity.
Mighty,
Yes,
is this the right slide, or do I need to go 1 or 2 up?
you go up some, good brother.
Tell me when, okay?
I tell you when to stop.
All right, hold on.
No problem. I tell you when to stop. Because this is power tonight. You feel the power, Bassa? Keep going.
People are feeling it. Not this one.
No, keep going. I'll tell you when to stop. Keep going. Keep going.
Is it a map or a bunch of sentences?
Let me say, keep going. Right there. Okay, keep going. One more. Go right there. Right, we was right there. So now, you see, you can go to the next map. Go to the next map because I just explained that map. So now, you see the ancient.
Hey, just let me know when I need to switch. I'm here.
I know you are. No problem, good brother. So now, as we can clearly see, we can see right before our eyes, this map right here is giving us an understanding of the Haraparian dynasty of the Indus River civilization. There's information right now that they just found civilizations amongst the Haraparians that go back 7,500 BCE. This is before Kemet, but I'm going before even that. I'm going back to the Lemurian dynasties. We talking about 36 million BCE. That's a different subject matter. Go to the next slide. We're about to get it popping. Go to the next slide. Now, the esoteric and exoteric are found in our ancient records, the Tanakh. From our original centers, then came the great Hebrew forefathers through their scribes, or though they scribes, often written from oral tradition. Centuries later, many things would take on a state that would have a cryptic language. This is what is so important when you start dealing in ancient, archaic Hebrew symbolism. We have to understand the cryptic language in certain passages within the scripture so we can enhance nationally. How you think these nations on this planet is elevating consciously and building technology? They building technology by understanding the bigger sheet, the bigger Eshiat, the Genesis code. Because there were civilizations that don't exist on this planet that was more highly advanced than this civilization that we in today. But because our minds are so engulfed, encapsulated, and enslaved in the evolutionary process from this Euro-Gentile devil, we can't realize and understand that there were higher civilizations before this civilization we have here today. This is a late bloomer right here. Also, we must take note that the genealogies were very important to our Hebrew Israelite ancestors because our seed line records and affirms and preserves the unbroken line of the descent from the original Elohim or Elohim leaders of the Lemurian, Atlantean, Chaldean, Hebraic wisdom of the royal seal. And also from the Hebraic patriarchs, next slide. It was the original Hebrew Israelite. Okay? It was from the original Hebrew Israelite sovereign nationals that were chosen to bring the nations of the earth back into Edenic Ha-Adam oneness by the Shemitic Atlantean Hebrew master teachers. Some of the said factors that our nation was chosen was based on egoic, psychological, spiritual, and physical characteristics that we made manifested by our vibrational wisdom, by our vibrational rhythm with the auras that were around us. We were chosen, not the way that we may think, oh, this mystery God just chose us and that was just that. No, it was a group of conscious brothers, okay, that understood the cycles and the seasons and understood what needed to be done to bring forth this renewed nation to be a light unto the nations, to bring harmony back to this plane of existence so we can elevate consciously and do what we need to do here. And that is to express oneness with the unity or the achad of the creator and grow consciously to maintain the portion within the soft, which is Yahweh and all absolute. We were known as those of the set apart way. My source is Exodus chapter 19:6, Leviticus chapter 20, verse 24 to 26, Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6, and Isaiah chapter 35, verse 8. And also you can go into the laws and make new the sacred books of the East, volume 25. Next slide. The mighty Hebrew is back. I'm number one. You got a real teacher, a master teacher here. Not all these people keep saying the Lord is going to do this. Yeah, that's cool when you're in a certain state of consciousness. But as you keep developing and growing, then you start to understand internally you are that which is. Not to say that you are Yahweh, but you are Elohim. You are Elohim. The destiny of the nation of Israel is in our own hands. We put ourselves in this captivity. We got to get ourselves out of this captivity. It was our nation that was and still is the trusted, representatives of the Edenic Chokmah, the wisdom that would dispense truth to humanity. At the Mighty Hebrew University, we are here to bring forth the succession of the sons of the prophets, as in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 5, and establish centers, the school of the prophets, as you see in Dimona, Israel, northeastern Africa, today ran by the Dr. Khazriel Ben Yahuda, dean of the school of the prophets of Yah conscious higher learning and dedication. When we go deeper into our search for roots when pertaining to our forefather Abraham, we will find a well of wisdom about this great man. Look what Sir Charles Leonard Worley stated. Check out what this man say, this Euro Gentile. He says, we must radically alter our view of the Hebrew patriarch when we see that his early years were passed in such sophisticated surroundings. Go to the next slide. Watch this. Go to the next slide. He was a citizen of a great city and inherited the traditions of an old and highly organized civilization. The houses themselves reveal comfort and even luxury. We found copies of the hymns that were used in the services of the temples, and together with them, mathematical tables. On these tables were everything ranging from plain addition sums to formulae for the extraction of square and cube roots. In other texts, the writers had copied out the old building inscriptions to be found in the city and had compiled in this way a short history of the temple. You can go, my source is Abraham, Recent Discoveries in Hebrew Origins, 1936, and or the Chaldeans, 1954, quoted from the Bible as History. Winard Killer. Go to the next slide. Come on, man. Listen, man. Our forefather Abraham, he wasn't no nomad. He wasn't a nomad. That's a lie. He was the son of a royal oracle priest, Torah. Abraham was, in fact, a very, very complex figure. When one reads what is now called the Bible on the surface level only, the reader of the Bible, by way of his enslavement, sees Abraham only as a spiritual man acting under divine command of the Heavenly Father. This is partially true, family. It's partially true. But it also signifies that his spiritual colonizing journey was carried out under the direction of the divine governmental leadership of the Lemurian, Atlantean, Chaldean, Hebraic wisdom of the royal seal. Also, our forefather Abraham leaving his parental home refers to the descent. Now we getting metaphysical now, because see, we got to understand. I'm gonna get deep on y'all. I'm gonna do a Nasi Yasavel on y'all real quick. Y'all think y'all moving in history just as physical subjects? Y'all are manifesting a cosmic dance within this scheme of things. Everything that's on earth is going on in the rest of the heavens because earth is a part of the heavens. Because the spheres or the dimensions that we're in, and earth being in the third dimension, is within the heavens. So the things that you're doing on the physical or lower plane is affecting the upper plane. Watch. So our forefather Abraham, when he left, it also represented the descent into matter of the divine life with its leaning potential buildups, meaning his attainment in death would portray the return or ascent of that life into the original source with those in it. Next slide. Watch. Listen, Yisrael. Go to the next slide. Watch this. Next slide. Okay, so I was waiting for him to go to the next slide. So, okay. Are you there, Bassam? Yep, there we go. So them inner powers would develop. That source would be the hidden wisdom of the Holy Bible, Volume 1, page 4, Godfrey Hudson. Thus, to understand the deepness, okay, you must understand the deepness of Abraham. One has to understand the true history of spiritual, psychological, and cosmic overruling epic within the birth, the way of life, or walk and death of Abraham. See, we know that Abraham was acting under the highest Kohen or priest leadership order of the Lemurian, Atlantean, Chaldean, Hebraic wisdom of the royal seal, because of the Tanakh and ancient records from the Indus Valley that speak about him as well. All y'all running around here talking about Abraham was a myth. My question to y'all that say that, why is there records of him in India that say that he exists? Go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. Because my whole thing is, you run around like, oh, he don't exist. But Abraham's personal experience by way of his psycho-spiritual nature would develop an inner seed or soul to ascend all physical matter from the manifestation of the Hebrew nation of the 12 tribes of the children of Yasha'Allah, Yisrael. Source Genesis 12:1, chapters 18 and 19. As an example of Abraham treading the path is in the story of the Bereshit or the Genesis, when we find that Abraham's Isha, Sarah, is barren until her name is manifested as Sarah, which has deep wisdom and significance, because now we're dealing with the sisters. Now we're dealing with the daughters of Zion or Zion. Y'all are more spiritual than what y'all can even imagine. Men of Israel, you can't even imagine how powerful you are. You do not understand the things that are going on within the multiverse is happening based on the movement that is going on within your mental plane. Everything is because of you, Yisrael. Go to the next slide. Everything is because of you. Okay? The reason why everything is happening because of you. Okay? Watch this. Now, Sarah is the former mind. You got to understand, Sarah is the former mind, the abstract mind represented by Abraham. Intuition, the sun cannot reach the lower mind as long as it retains its original characteristics of marked separative individuality and critical analysis apply in the given name Sarah, contentious. For in the symbolical Hebrew or ancient Hebrew archaic language behind Hebrew thought, the name of a person is descriptive of their characteristics as also of their inner powers and capabilities. When once the limited aspects of the mentality are changed, it becomes susceptible of impregnation It's no longer barren by the spiritual will to rock of Yahweh. I will forever become what I will to become, thought the higher Yah mind, Abraham, the reception, birth of intuitive wisdom and vision, Isaac, then becomes possible. The change, however, is not in the basic character of the mind, but only in the use to which existent faculties and attributes are put. So the experience, the historical experience that our forefather was going through was spiritually experiencing it on a spiritual plane. You are not moving just as physical objects. Everything is connected. The yin and the yang, the shield of Dawid, everything, or Dawayad. It's all connected. Next slide. Next slide. We going in. Abraham is deeper than a man. Cain, indeed, he is a man in the historical sense, but just as our forefather Abraham existed in the historical, so he must exist in the spiritual, psychological, and cosmic sense all at one time. Y'all sure y'all want to build with me? Quiet as it's kept. It is the Abrahamic cycles that keep this universe in balance. That's another topic for another discussion. You know what I mean? We're not even going to touch on that right now because that might, I'm not trying to, break up the mind. The Indus Valley records state that Abraham or Abraham in the Hebrew, was an ex-Brahmin. That's a historical fact. In fact, Abraham was, in fact, an ex-Brahmin. He practiced Brahmanism. Yes, he did. Some people might say, oh, no, he didn't. Yes, he did. We got historical records. We can prove it. Okay. He broke off from that, became Abraham, no Brahmin. This is said to find support from the tradition that some of our very early Hebrew ancestors of the later Israelites are said to be descended from the Yadavas and the Cladarias of the Yahuwas of India, in Sand and in Iran, and were truly born from their father, no Brahman, Abram. They say some 8,000 BCE. Yeah, I mean, go to the next slide. Some people, even though you'll have a date 2100 BCE, but remember, we told our stories in cycles. My source you can go to is The Secret Doctrine by H.P. Blavatsky, Volume 3, page 205, and Volume 6. In ancient Hebrew, Abraham means exalted father. And in ancient Sanskrit, the word Abram derives from Abraham, the clouds or the bosom of the eternal one, who is none other than Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh. It may be a shock to most, but the Hebrew people existed on this planet before the birth of Eber in Genesis chapter 10, 21 to 24. Go to the next slide. Our vast beginnings are not merely in prehistoric and historic times, but we also existed in pre-physical states of being. As Hebrew Israelite sovereign nationals, our origins began in matter subtar than that we know, and comprises 7 emanating cycles of endless regeneration outlined within the Bereshit or Genesis code in chapter 1 of Genesis, or Bereshit or Beta Esha. What we teach here at the Mighty Hebrews is simple. When pertaining to continents, they can be compared with what scientists today call the continental drift. See, I'm bringing y'all into focus so y'all can see the connection of India, South America, North America, Sumatra, Madagascar, all that, and how when Lemuria was destroyed 12 million BCE, a lot of these people that lived in these areas start moving into these areas as colonies. One of their main stations was southern India. At this time, we talking about Africa being underwater, Jack. When Lemuria originally existed, you know what I'm saying, it was underwater. But once the volcanic eruptions took place, you know what I mean, they start moving into different areas and start colonizing different areas. Okay? So people still vibing on civilizations that were developed 7,000 years ago. But when you read the Tanakh in its trueness, the Tanakh teaches you about these pre-Diluvian civilizations. We just don't know about it. So now we got modern geography. You can go to the next slide. Modern geologists believe that the Earth's land surface was once a single land mass, okay, called Pangaea, that split into two. The southern half of Pangaea is Gondwana land. Next slide, Bassem. Okay, combined modern South America, Africa, Arabia, India, Australia, and Antarctica. The northern half, North Asia, later divided into North America and Eurasia, thus creating the Atlantic Ocean between them. Now, the name Lemuria is a term that came into being in 1864 CE by zoologist Philip L. Scalater for a continent stretching from Africa to India. Okay? And as you go to the next slide, keep going, because I want the people to see. Keep going. Not that way, the other way. Yeah, keep going. Keep going. It's okay. Keep going. Keep going. That's right. Keep going. And they break down that this continent stretched from Africa to India and to the Malay Peninsula. Okay. So, okay. Let me make sure that I'm on the right path with y'all. Okay. Oh, you got to keep going, good brother. Keep going. So India and Malaysia Peninsula, the word Lumer is derived from Lumer, which signifies a monkey-like animal found mainly in Madagascar, but once more widely distributed in the Indian Ocean area. Okay, so we know that the continent was proposed to explain the geological and zoological similarities in the area. This is how they're proving it, because they see in certain animals that exist in Madagascar, they're existing in India, and these, but they're not existing in other areas. Even when you start going into their traditions, they have traditions connecting them to the Indus Valley, and on top, the old Indus Valley records is connecting them to also what we know as ancient Lemuria. Okay. And this, okay, now you keep going, because I want the people to be able to see. Because I already got my notes, so I can see. Okay, keep going. You're almost there. Right, next one. You can stop right there for a second. Stop right there. So if you look at this map, which I showed y'all this map before, giving props to the brother over in Telluride, Israel, Zaquin Amariel, or Hoshua Amariel. They are the creators of this map, giving us an idea that Eden itself is the planet, which we Hebrew Israelites have taught for years. The Garden of Eden and Eden is two different things. So you see the whole planet as one. Go to the next map, Brother Bassam. As you can see, this is when the cataclysms took place, and now you seeing the Earth's surface breaking up, as you can clearly see. And this is this was reconstructed by the Mariel family. Them two, the first map we just seen and this map were constructions of him. Go to the next one. Go to the next map. We almost done. So now this map right here is an old map. They say that this is a map of ancient Lemuria, okay? And the sages of ancient India that deals with the standard of the Xi'an, they are the ones that held these maps down. You can go get a book by W. Scott Elliott called Ancient Lemuria, Lost Atlantis, or Lost Lemuria, Ancient Atlantis. And in that book, it gives you the maps. And as you can see, Africa is clearly underwater at this time. Go to the next map. Now, as you can see, here's Lemuria. You see Madagascar is connected. And then right on top, where you see Lemuria in the center, right on top, do you not see India right there? So the first places that civilization in the sense of technology and all that will go to Madagascar, to your left, to your top, India, and to your right, Sumatra, Australia, and in that area. And then later in history, it will go into what we know as Africa and different other parts of the world. And understand, this is not discrediting people of melanated skin, because these people were melanated people. More darker in complexion, a mahogany black than what you see today in Africa. As a matter of fact, quiet as it's kept, more dark and melanated people are actually found in India than in Africa. Go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. Okay, go to so we see that the continent was proposed, as I said, to explain geological. You can go to the next one. Zoological similarities in the area which correspond part of Gowala land. Okay, so now we're talking about the ancient location of ancient Lemuria, because this is what we're talking about. Now, the ancient continent of Lemuria was located in the regions covered today by the Indian Ocean, which slowly condensed out of the watery element between what is now Australia, some parts of Africa, Madagascar, and Ceylon, and Sumatra. I just said that when I broke it down in the map. This ancient continent also reached as far as India and Asia Minor. The land of Israel was the center between Lemuria and Atlantis. Go to the next slide. My sources is Genesis, Creation, and the Patriarchs by Emil Bloch, pages 45 and 47 under the geography of the Holy Land. The location of ancient Atlantis. The continent of Atlantis extended from a point a few degrees east of Iceland to about the site now occupied, by Region de Janeiro. Let me make sure. Let me go back. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. I was still on ancient Lemuria. Okay. Occupied. Okay. So the ancient continent of Lemuria, as I said, was located in the region covered today by the Indian Ocean, which slowly condensed out of the watery element. Okay. I read that. Okay. So in the portion of my book, I got to make sure I'm at the right spot because I'm looking in my book directly. Okay. So the continent of Atlantis extended from a point a few degrees east of Iceland to about the site now occupied by Region de Janeiro in South America, embracing Texas, in the Gulf of Mexico, the southern and eastern states of America, up to and including Labrador. It stretched across the ocean to the islands of Scotland and Ireland and a small portion of the north of England, forming that area, while its equatorial lands embrace Brazil in the whole stretch of the ocean to the African Gold Coast. Go to the next slide. We got a few more slides left. Go to the next slide. Source: Legends of Atlantis and Lost Lemuria by W. Scott Elliott, page 24. Israel was the center between Atlantis and Lemuria. Israel has always been the center of gravity for uprightward motion in the time between Hyperborea and Lemuria, as well as later on between Lemuria and Atlantis, and again between Atlantis and Asia, the matrix of the post-Black Atlantean cultures. Even today, Israel holds the key position between the three great continents of Africa, Asia, and Europe, both geographically and in regard to the character of the land. Next slide. The strip of the land between the Jordan Valley and the Mediterranean connects to Europe. The land east of the Jordan has the dimensions and the mystique of the Asian Orient. The south extending the Judean and the Gab Desert, where Dimona, Israel, sits, as stated in Joshua 15:22, and the Dead Sea, or the Sea of Life, into the Sinai mountain range, has the intrinsic oneness with Africa. The ancient land of Israel is the key to the great cosmologic secrets. Next, the cosmologic secrets that we circle around in the historical penetration of humanity's beginnings. The etheric geographical polarity dominates Israel. That's why everybody wants that land. It's important because it's a spiritual energy that dominates that land, and they need that land. And nowhere else on earth is there a soul contrast of such forceful impact as that is between Galilee and Judea. Go to my sources: Genesis, Creation, and the Patriarchs by Elmore Block, pages 45 to 47, under Geography of the Holy Land. You can also go to some extra primary sources, one by Preston Elizabeth W., The Earth and Its Cycles, London. Go to the next slide. London Theosophical Publishing, 1930. Two, go to Wisdom of Chaldea, The Movies by Charles A. And three, Kingdom of the Gods, Godfrey Hudson, and Kabbalah Unveiled. Also, you can go to the Dictionary of Anthropology, giving all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme, eternal, powerful one of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, those that are striving for righteousness all over the planet Earth, that want to see our people rule in righteousness, not just this plane of existence, but every plane of existence that is in existence. We will rule in righteousness and dominate as the supreme, controllable, and uncontrollable power that Yah wants us to be, and that's to rule in Torah Constitution. Kuma Yisrael. Kumwam Yasha'Allah. We will rise with oneness and within truth by way of Torah Constitution, by way of Hebrew Israelite sovereign nationalism, and destroy all those that wanted to destroy us. Hallelujah, 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 Ya Chai, Ya Chai, Ya Chai. Shalom Aleichem.
Hallelujah. I don't know if the Mighty Hebrew is still around. I know he's on a different time scale than we are. He's over in Tanzania. So, Mighty Hebrew, if you're still with us, you can go ahead and unmute your mic. If not, I totally understand. But y'all, there was a lot of information that was shared on this video. You're gonna have to go back and watch it. But most importantly, it is the reprogramming of our mind. Of course, we've been programmed with all kind of information. We've been bombarded with just so many different, thoughts and religions and things of that nature that, we have to always remember we got to keep an open mind when it comes to, receiving new information. You know what I mean? Because we have to, push Israel forward, and whatever means necessary, we got to get it done. So with that being said, we're going to play this song here by the Mighty Hebrew to close it out. And again, please share the video. We got the Cash App down here. We want to be able to send some support to the brother, out there in Tanzania, and, because they're doing a lot of work out there. But until then, I appreciate y'all. Y'all make sure you subscribe to the channel just in case you haven't. All right. Peace and blessing. Shalom alaikum.
Lost tribes
Israel feel pain. Come on, devil's lies on the rocks without shame. What? Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. And trust the devil and uplift your hard wall. Lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Fuck em. Devil's lies on the rocks without shame. Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. And trust the devil and uplift your hard wall. A mighty power frees minds. The Gentile scholars lies to shower to the wise that was blinded. A strange land prophesied. Lost tribes became Philosophy. Apocalypse of Abraham. 32:16. 400 years coming in ships and chains being whipped. Ezekiel 1949. Placed in the pit, dying in feces and piss. Sitting next to skeletons, 350 million Paris in the middle passage. Some sisters gave birth to your bastards, creating melodic trios from the poison of demonic semen. Being raped by perverted beasts in heat. With a thought of jungle fever, a liar wall set them devils evil. I see the shadow called deceiver in the image of a non-people. Speaking the tongue off balance with the rhythm off beat. From the heart that the wolves eat. February the 14th, they feast in ceremonies and tights filling the rush of Israelite blood and Ghana who they first crushed. With the help of Hamites, praising Muhammad as their prophet, ruptured the dynasty of Zah, placing the mind in a genie bottle only for a time. 1969, first Israelites shine in the Mona, kingdom of Yah, resurrect the lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Come on, devil's lies on the rocks without shame. What? Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. Trust the devil and uplift your hard wall. Lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Devil's lies on the rocks without shame. Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. And trust the devil and uplift your hard wall. My mental plane, range celestial terrain, power range, glass stainless, ascended master in the rain. Return, rearrange your animated matrix. No escaping, ship shaping, incarnated awakening. Numerian Texas label secret to those stargazing for the fate of Jacob. Climb ladder, shattering to the 12th planet. Clouds magnetic, Yah's eye vision, lightning striking. Eden Viking with force of Dami. Lotus my llama, controlling karma. My thorns Mars, master with law as a rule savior. My behavior permeates dark matter in four chambers. Earthbound and physical. Myself, I'm a stranger, really an angel. Trap prolonged from anger. Stargating, use 6-point triangles to astral project my temple to elements of wise intelligence to a land of never end. Losing 5 senses to senselessness. Vision envisions appearance of Sirius. Aligning every pyramid, the minds of builders of sicker rocks and psychogoths. Allahayim development has been arrested since New Atlantis. Yah bless my vocab. It's beyond letterman. The king is solo, controlling the global from electromagnetic oval oven mortals with techniques. One with Levitical priests. Sacrifice truth instead of beast meat. Secret science, initiate gods and right knowledge. The son of Enoch, hallelujah. Blessed be the rock, Yahweh Ahaya. What my Ayashah, we rise higher. Etana, Matazayam, Bain Yasha Allah. Torah we follow to Makubah, take Zion. To the land of promise of our forefathers. Abba, Yahai, shining like spectrums. Universal cosmic sound wave objects. Move from stillness. Endless being, break the dream. Chanting Hashema Cree on Astroline. Born in Kabbalah trees. The garden of Eden, we Elohim, watch Adam and Eve manifest new better she. Lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Come on, devil's lies on the rocks without shame. What? Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. And trust the devil and uplift your hard wall. Lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Devil's lies on the rocks without shame. Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. And trust the devil and uplift your hard wall.